Is there any place I can go to avoid your spirit? To be out of your sight? If I climb to the sky, if I go to the depths, you're there. If I flew on morning's wings to the far western horizon, you'd find me in an instant. Night and day, darkness and light are all the same to you. You shaped me first inside, then out. You know every bone in my body, how I was sculpted from nothing into something. Your thoughts, how rare, how beautiful. I'll never comprehend them. I look behind me and you're there. And up ahead and you're there too. Your reassuring presence, coming and going. The days of my life all prepared before I'd even lived one day.
All stories have a framework. Every human being is a story. The prodigal son story is you've got this beautiful emergence of the very being of God inside of our humanity. You've got God the Father, who is a father, and every one of us, male and female, are the sons. And what the Father does is to work, to open up a path so that they know the truth of their being.
We are sons, and we are to call him Abba, which means I'm a little boy. There's something in us that knows what it is like to desire to be so small and so protected by a great father. Most of us didn't have one, but the few who did really understand what it is to crawl up in his lap and to know that he beams over us.
There is in all of us this innate capacity to believe and receive a really wonderful Father, even if we didn't have one.
There is a longing in the deepest parts of us to belong. The hope that there is a table somewhere that we might actually be comfortable inside our own skin. We don't have to hide. We don't have to have our secrets. There's always been a community of relationship. We're designed for that. A lot of times our first experience of God is going to happen in any kind of a masculine sense through our relationships with our dads or some male figure. And if that's violated and if that person has no clue who they really are either, we still adapt to the presentation of God through that person. My dad didn't have the chip for being a dad. He was never a father, and he's never known how to be one. When I was growing up, he was the angry man who I didn't want anything to do with. It took me all of 50 years to wipe the face of my father completely off the face of God.
I was at like a family friend's house, and one of the guys, he was maybe 13 or 14, basically had me like engage in like oral sex with him. And to me, I didn't necessarily know that it was wrong. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew it was something that I'm not supposed to tell somebody. And I think not having the freedom to share did something. My father isn't in my life. He's not to be trusted. And then the one guy I'm around, he abused me. So he's not to be trusted. So obviously men aren't to be trusted. So I think it perverted my view of maleness. I think it perverted my view of authority. I think it perverted my view of God.
Fathers have a way of telling their sons and their daughters the truth of who they are. And when we lose that, when nobody tells us, we are open to every lie that anyone will tell us.
It mystifies me to no end how I can find illicit sexual behavior and pornography more entertaining than the presence of God. I mean, that's just insanity.
In 29 years of being married, there's been between 13, 15 affairs. Spaced out. I mean, there were times where, you know, we would go a year or two, and just things were good. And I, in my mind, I thought, man, this was an issue of the past, and I'd be right back where I started.
Me being on the playground in kindergarten, finding girls to touch on, finding porn on cable TV. I had like this life-size doll that you get, humping it, you know, just being a very sexual child. And I think when you look at a 5-year-old, you don't assume that a 5-year-old would know that much. You don't assume that a 5-year-old would be doing stuff like that when their parents go to sleep, but I was. I didn't even realize that what I went through affected me until I was watching Oprah. Random. I was watching an Oprah episode, and a lady was on there talking about how she was raped and molested. And I remember her describing what happened to her, and that's when it clicked to me. Oh, I was molested. I didn't know. Like, I didn't know that what happened to me was wrong. Neither did I know that it affected me so deeply, that how the ways I was behaving with the pornography that was so secret, yet so, I was a slave to it. That's when it clicked. I was like 14, that this is why, this is what that guy introduced to me was something wrong. But I didn't know how to stop either. You know, I didn't know what freedom from that meant. I didn't know who to talk to or how to talk to somebody, so I just did what I had to do because I felt like that was the only avenue to joy in most places, which was sex.
I feel this sense that something is uniquely wrong with me. So I'm never telling anyone, but it feels like everybody knows. It feels like something on my face that everybody can see it, that if you get close enough to me, it makes me awkward in crowds, it makes me insecure, it makes me perform. I become a great performer. I so much want you to love me. And I think if I'm funny enough, or talented enough, cool enough, witty enough, do funny things in a crowd, that you'll think I'm worth knowing and loving. But I don't believe it. I always felt that God was mildly disgusted with me.
Hearing that he loves me didn't really resonate because it's like when it's all said and done, he's still gonna judge me. You know, when it's all said and done, he's still not happy with where I am or who I am. And so I don't feel close to him. I don't feel intimate with him. I don't even feel the freedom to speak to him because he's over there and I'm over here.
I think shame fundamentally is that inner judgment that there is something ugly, distorted, and broken about us that if someone were to see, they could not bear being in relationship with us, and we could not bear being in relationship with them.
Shame is that thing that drives my compulsive behavior. In whatever manner, I'm never going to be enough, so I have permission. I have entitlement to do wrong.
The better storyline in a way would be, one day I finally figured out how messed up I was, so I went and got help. You know? Yeah, no. You know, some of us are too broken to even think that far outside of ourselves, you know? So a lot of us have to get caught in one way or the other. And that is a great and terrifying grace.
I had told myself it's just porn, nobody's getting hurt, and I knew immediately
this was the crossroads. Melody and I were living in an apartment. It was a Saturday morning. She had gone to the grocery store, and I had been in an adult chat room and had made a connection with someone. And that particular Saturday morning, the computer was up, the chat window was open, and she just popped up. And what was on the screen was, I can be in Birmingham tonight if you want me to be. I said yes. And that night I had my first one night stand, and I crossed a line that I swore that I would never cross.
The best scenario I saw for myself living in the dark was to keep everything a secret. So if I kept everything a secret, no one would get hurt. Looking back on it now, I know that was a lie. Probably one of the biggest lies I've ever been told. It was found out that I was having an affair with my friend's wife, but my life just imploded.
I get a call, and Kim says, I'm waiting for you at your office. And I know. That's the whole phone call. And what she knew, and I knew that she knew when she said it, was that I was in a 3-month affair with one of her best friends at the time.
Probably the most unexplainable reality in all of the universe is how can you have everything and simply want something else that you've been told not to get? That's madness. You've got billions of dollars and you sell your soul for a quarter that you see on the ground. To try and explain that, all we can say is God gave freedom to love, and without the choice to say no, there's no meaning to saying yes. if we understand that sex is not about sex, it isn't just about the struggle with lust. Lust is desire gone mad. So every man, every woman struggles with lust for something that fills something of our emptiness. Imagine when you feel empty or angry or ashamed, when you feel things in your body that are not working well, and one act will immediately create about 200 to 300% of what you normally live with in a matter of moments. Let's say it's more than just addictive. Let's say it is compulsive. Many of us have lust that we satiate that actually sickens us. And yet, then we find that we need more food to be able to get that sickness pushed away. Eventually, we begin to face, it's an addiction. It's going to kill us.
Over time in those chat rooms, I ultimately had 7 one-night stands. People I didn't know their names. I didn't know anything about them really, other than in that moment they were willing to give me some validation. And when things were hard with my wife, that they would be there in some ways to make me feel better about myself. And so this became my place of escape, and I ran to it more and more often.
Though the ways in which I was acting out my sexuality, pornography, masturbation, I knew in essence was wrong. It felt bad, but it felt freeing. It felt good. It quenched something in me. Though the quenching didn't last long, which was very frustrating. It was like, man, I do this one day, and I gotta do it the next day, and I gotta do it the next day, and I gotta do it the next day, because I don't know how else to stop.
It was like taking a drug. It was this, there was this unbelievable guilt and shame and associated with it, but at the same time I felt this high. The antidote was for me to go out and have another affair. You know, and I get caught up in this cycle of shame and wanting to feel better. And that was my drug.
Being molested, I don't necessarily know if it introduced same-sex attractions or if it revealed what was already there, but I do remember distinctly feeling an attraction for women in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, which moved into me being this very sexual being inwardly, but not feeling the freedom to tell somebody about it. And so in high school is when I finally acted out on what was inside of me for so long and pursued a relationship with a woman. And it felt like an adventure, if that makes sense. It's like, I've been wanting to do this a long time.
of my favorite writers of the 20th century was Malcolm Muggeridge. And one morning, he's a young man in his 20s, and he gets up in the morning and he decides to go for a swim in the river. She has disrobed. And she becomes the focal point for his entire universe in that moment. He walks up to her with the intent of seduction. And she's a leper.
I just remember that night, just this flood of shame. And now, you know, it's one thing, because I'd never been bold enough to tell Melody about my struggle with pornography. And she'd caught me, you know, here and there, but I'd always kind of minimized it or explained it away. But now I was an adulterer. I had broken the vows that I had made to her and I'd made to God. To say I had a secret before, you know, was one thing, but now the secret it became enormous, and it was suffocating, and it becomes this slippery slope that nothing is sacred, because when the pain is to a point, it's whatever it takes to get that next fix, and that became my existence. You know, the shame around that, you know, then beating myself up, why couldn't I have said no? Because that wasn't okay. I didn't want to be exposed. If anything, I'm supposed to be working hard to keep it all together.
Man, no matter what you did to clean yourself up, to look good, to play the right parts, to say the right things, shame was always there to tell you that you're not. You know, you're a joke. You're a fool. Look at you. You did this again. How could you? You're bad. And when you're bad, God doesn't love you. He doesn't want to have anything to do with you. You have to earn that love.
And now I hide because I fear God's response to me. And so everything I'm doing then, out from that moment on, is I'm trying somehow to cover myself so I don't look so bad. And I go through this life trying so hard to manage expectations, manage behavior, so I look okay. And my motivation is fear.
I was always afraid that my addiction to pornography had disqualified me from any kind of relationship with God. And I can't tell you how many times I told him, I'm done. I felt enough guilt and enough shame, and I'm going to be clean from here on out. And so I worked hard to get back into the Father's love, into any kind of place with him where I felt relationally good. And in the end, I gave up. I said, I'm done trying.
Melody didn't find out about my infidelity until after my 7th one-night stand. I'd bought some things for this encounter, and she found a receipt in my wallet and began to ask about some of the items on the receipt. And I was not really prepared with a story to cover up and just kind of fumbled through the lie, and she knew that I was lying.
I'm going, okay, wait, 6 months ago I had a baby. And 9 months ago, I was pregnant with a baby. And 2.5 years ago, I was having our other child. And so it was just like, you're having sex with this person, you're having sex with me. And just, it was overwhelming. It's a real hard thing when you just feel like the person that's supposed to be safest for you is no longer safe. So like, who can I trust and where can I go? And I mean, I think the biggest thing was why? Why when I'm so available, and why does he look at that instead of me, and why was that not enough?
After 6 months of separation, we got back together. A year later, after being back together, after avoiding divorce, I reached out to someone and ultimately had another one-night stand. Here's a woman who had so graciously received me back after 7 one-night stands. And to have done it again, after all the grace that I'd been given, how could I make that mistake again? I could not understand myself. How could I continue to go back to this? What was so fundamentally broken in me that I could not receive all the good things that God had given me?
I feel like I did everything that I could have done to make my marriage work, to work on my own stuff, my own sin. And, it unfortunately led to divorce.
There's a character in the story that hates goodness and beauty and truth. And that character is one that despises the beauty of God. So we can see that virtually in all our stories of how we came to our sexuality, how abuse came into our lives, there's somebody there who is scattering and bringing accusation in order to ruin.
So I'm in 5th grade in Upland, California. It's an idyllic area. Everything's great. But there's this tough kid in my 5th grade class, and he beats up people. He doesn't beat me up because I'm funny. But one day he says, Lynch, I want to meet down at the railroad tracks. And there was a place down at the end where all of us kids went. It had a rail car where oranges were piled in there, and then they were sent out all across the country, and we would just go in there and eat oranges. It was Saturday, though, and nobody was there except us. And I got into the rail car, and then he followed me in. And he gave me that look that said, this will all be different now. And he told me the things that he would do to me to violate me and the things that I would do to him. And I don't know if I was scared, I don't know if I was intimidated or overwhelmed, but I did it. And my first thought was, no one must ever know.
I go to boarding school in a totally different world, and the big boys would come at night and molest the little boys. And so that became an ongoing experience, and it was a lot. By the time I was 6, I was already twisted enough to be a predator at 6.
Let's just talk about abuse, very frankly. It brings evil such joy to bring you shame in the middle of your own sexuality. Why? Because the return on investment, how long does it take to introduce you to pornography? 5 minutes. How long does it take to sexually abuse a boy or girl? Literally seconds. And what's the trajectory of shame over a lifetime? A lifetime. So for a few seconds of violation, shame, contempt, violence, self-hatred, confusion about the arousal I felt, while at the same time the hatred of the arousal I felt in that process leaves the human heart divided.
There is nothing so devastating, I think, in terms of human experience that rips the fabric of the human soul apart quite like sexual abuse. It climbs into the spaces that should never be broken and breaks them. I met a gal. She's a preacher's kid who had been told growing up in the church that when bad things happen, it's because you're bad and God has to punish you and set the scales of justice right and all that. And she was even told by her parents inside that tradition that she was God's punishment to them. She was. Well, she wrote me an email telling me about this whole story. And in it, she had 2 amazing statements. One was, she said, Paul, when I was growing up, I didn't really know what the difference between God and Satan was, except with Satan, I always knew where I stood. The character of Satan had more certainty than the character of God. And a lot of us are like that. And this is the accusation that's in the Garden of Eden, in the mouth of the serpent, the very first conversation about God. You can't trust him. He's not good all the time. He'll lie to you. He doesn't want you to become everything you were intended to be. Second thing she said was, I wasn't afraid to die. I was terrified of seeing the look of disgust on his face when we met. See, in a lot of us, we understand that. Where we think the truth of our being is, we're worthless.
remember one time I had a chance to preach at a church on fatherhood and the sexual brokenness of the human heart. And I remember that morning preaching these Bible verses about how you can be free from addiction and how you're free in Christ. And I remember being pretty condescending and condemning towards some of the men in that church. You know, how could you keep looking at pornography when Jesus is doing this incredible stuff all over the earth? You know, pull up your pants and grab a sword. You know, it's just, I remember getting back from that trip and I went on a walk, and I remember having such a thirst for porn in my heart. And I binge on pornography. And that's not enough. I go back to my office that night and I binge and I binge and I binge. And I'm so numbed by the end of it that I know I can't go home. I woke up in the morning and I had this sense of invitation that God might want to talk to me, but I didn't think it would be anything but absolute rage and anger. But I went before him. You know, this is post me graduating a Christian college. This is decades of me calling myself a believer, and I'm still entrenched in this stuff. Speaking out of both sides of my mouth, I couldn't be more hypocritical in this moment. And unsolicited, I see this kind of vision take over my line of sight. And I remember I was in prison, and my hands were cuffed together, and I had a tray of food, and I was walking in the cafeteria in prison past all these tables, and no one would let me sit with them, and I found my own table, and I sat down, and in walks Jesus. And he's dressed in prison clothing, like me. And he sits down across the table from me, and he doesn't say anything. And I asked him, I said, "Will you eat another meal with me?" And he said, "I'll eat with you anytime you want. By the way, the door's open. You can leave anytime you want." When I choose to run from him into the darkness, he's with me in that moment. And he's not angry, and his facial expression is fixed on mine, and he's loving me. And he wasn't demanding that I stop. He was demanding that I invite him into that moment, to help me understand how I got into that moment and what's beneath that moment, and to help me search for what I'm really searching for. Man, I melted. You know, it's one thing to read, "I'm loved." It's one thing to read, "I will be with you." But for him to be with me in my addiction, for him to be with me in prison, and in sickness, and in relapse over and over and over again, that's what changes me.
I was kicked out of the house, living in a hotel, separated from my family. And I thought to myself, how in the world did I screw my life up so bad? I thought, how did I get here? Why even wake up at this point? And being a police officer, I have firearms, and I don't know if I've ever been suicidal before. Thinking, yeah, that's my way out, you know? That's how I can end all this pain. Everybody will be happy. Kevin's gone. He doesn't have to hurt his family anymore. He doesn't have to hurt his friends. Pain goes away. Everybody's happy.
The decision was clear. Either I face Kim or I kill myself. To this day, I don't know how I made it across town. And I drive into the parking lot, into my parking space, knowing Kim is inside, waiting for me. And I went in and faced her. I hit the bottom. And she lights into me, and 4 hours into this, I say to her, okay, if we're going to do this, I have to tell you every secret that I have. Because secrets have been killing me my whole life. And naively, she said, bring it on. And it destroyed her. She said, you know, I will never believe another word that comes out of your mouth the rest of your life. I'm standing on that cliff and I'm looking down at this abyss. And I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do? You don't know if there's anything about you that's actually true. And I was describing that to a friend who showed up at my house, who asked me, where are you right now? And I described standing on the edge of the cliff. And I said to her, you know what I am? I'm the dried up little pile of shit. And I'm terrified. I'm terrified that the wind is going to come up and blow it all away, and nothing will be left. And my friend says, Paul, there's a seed. And then I think, if there's a seed, something could grow. I don't know what it is, but something real and living could grow. And all my hope came back in this little seed. When the prodigal hits the bottom, something can grow. And it begins to grow. And it begins to be living. And it reframes everything about his humanity. Inside dignity and intent and destiny.
What's terrifying about any kind of liberation, especially in the soul, is that I don't have any control over when it comes or how. I just know that it's coming. I know that He is coming for me. And that He loves me too much to allow me to stay in the world that I built for myself.
I think if there was one thing that would surprise us that God would say, and that is, I'm not ashamed of you, and I'm not afraid of you. I want your heart. You think I'm out to change you, to ruin you, to in many ways judge you. All the judgment has already been taken care of. All your sin has already been taken care of. And what I want is for you to know my delight, even in your brokenness.
See this ring? It has a cross on it. This is a torture device. But this has become a precious symbol to me, because God is willing to climb onto the worst that I can bring, to the deepest place of loss that I can create. And he climbs on it in order to transform it into something that is now precious.
I met Preston at a poetry event in Los Angeles, and I was sharing my testimony about being a lesbian. He was sharing his testimony about being a very lustful man that loves sleeping with women. And so we both met just like, this is my stuff, this is your stuff. And we both connected just on a friend level. And so we were friends for 3 years. But in our friendship, it was weird because God used him to show me that all men weren't the same. I had still believed that all men were like my father, that all men were inconsistent, that they weren't loving, that they weren't compassionate, that they weren't sensitive, that they weren't intentional. Preston was literally everything. He was always that. And it was like in our friendship, God used him to break down my walls and to help heal me of a lot of wounds. But even when we entered into a relationship, it was just like, you are not gonna hurt me. And so it's like I was guarded for years. I think my lesbianism, though it was a sexual attraction, it was deeper than that. It was, I trust these people, I trust women with my heart. I trust them with my vulnerability. I trust them with who I am deep inside. So to be with Preston was me putting myself, what felt like, in a position to be devastated. I remember one time we were in Trinidad to do a show, and I told him, I was like, I don't know why I'm with you. I was like, I don't know why I'm not with women. Like, why am I with you? I don't feel the same for you that I feel for women. And we left Trinidad not speaking, and he texted me the next day. He said, I love you. And it just broke me. Like, I straight want to cry. It broke me, because like, that's how Christ is. Like, when we don't want him, he still pursues us. And so it's like, how can I not marry this guy when he loves me like Jesus?
I wonder if one of the greatest truths that I and men like me might hear is that God is with me in my darkness, that God is with me in my shame, and that he's with me in my addiction, in my pain, in my unsettledness, in my woundedness that I don't want anybody else to see.
And so it's not for any of us an impossible journey to say, I've waited forever for a father who would protect me, teach me, enjoy me, let me know that I'm absolutely a son, fully part of this family, and nothing I can do can ever change that.
when I embrace how God sees me rather than how I see myself and how other people see me, I think that's where true joy comes in. That weeds out discouragement. That even weeds out us seeking it in other people. Because I think until we tap in to God's opinion, and it's an absolute opinion, it's an opinion that has authority and holds weight in eternity. When we tap into that, we've tapped into what makes us us.
Part of my healing process was I got to the place where I finally understood that my significance comes from who I am, not from anything I would ever do. And I think we have couched all of this language in a punitive frame of reference theologically, where God has turned his face from the ones he loved because of our inability to live up to his expectations. And it's a lie. It is not true. He has come to set us free to be fully human and fully alive.
God wants you naked. Why? Because he wants to clothe you. God wants you to enter into your heartache. Why? Because he really wants to bring you a taste of joy. So often we think God is just trying to get us to conform, when really what he's committed to is unbelievable transformation. If we could only enter the depths of his love, we would find our lives deeply changed.
God collects our tears. And tears are the tangible essence of broken hearts. And the beauty of collected tears is that it means that my sorrows actually mean something. And it's just a way that redemption happens, even from the places that are most shattered.
When God showed me himself, when I saw that he was friend and Lord and Savior and good and forgiving, when I saw that, it was like my desire was Jesus. And I reckoned that me just loving him would not fix, but it would help me sustain and walk free from everything else. I didn't know how. I didn't know how I would walk away. I just know in that moment, I had no choice but to choose him.
When he calls us a saint, he makes an incredible statement about us. We are no longer defined by being a sinner. And we have a choice. I can continue on the way I have been going, or I can make a choice for moments at a time at first, and then more and more, but it is a choice in time where I say, God, this is who you say I am. I am your beloved, and I am new, and I am good. You did all that rewiring the day I trusted what you did on the cross. That's a choice I have to make. It's hard for me to dare risk it because I see my behavior. So I have to no longer trust my assessment of me and make this incredible, daring gamble to believe that he's right, that God's right, that this is how I am.
There's a massive difference between love and infatuation. Infatuation is a projection of your imagination onto something. This is why porn has such an attraction, because it's the imagination of yourself being fulfilled. It has nothing to do with the other person as a real person.
And part of my deliverance out of pornography was real connection with a real woman. Not avoidance, connection.
Both of us coming back into remarriage with one another is really embracing that it's not a day at the beach, that it's a mountain climb, and it's a lot of work. And there are a lot of beautiful, beautiful moments, but there's a lot of moments that are tough. Well, we were married for 11 years and divorced for almost 6, and this October the 3rd, we'll be celebrating our 6-year anniversary of being remarried.
The way God writes our stories, it's never as we anticipate. And certainly many times along the way, it doesn't feel like he's very good. And sometimes it feels like he's abandoned us. And certainly I look back and there's many moments, when it was like, God, where are you?
Before, it was more about us putting our absolute best foot forward for one another and having each other up on a pedestal. And coming in the second round is both of us seeing our brokenness, the good, the bad, the ugly, the everything, and really not being shocked by it.
And realizing that the one who knows us best, who created us, loves us just as we are. And when we can really accept that and receive his love, then it frees us to truly love one another.
I'm a broken man sexually, and yet there's healing, there's growth. I've become more holy, not because I'm better, but because I've understood the beauty of God for my brokenness. I'm not controlled by shame. Oh, I still am, but not as much as I once was. There's more wholeness, and yet the paradox, I'm more broken than I've ever been, more needing grace than I've ever been.
When people ask me, how are you guys still together? It wasn't about us fixing our marriage. There was no fixing. It was broken beyond repair. It was knowing that Christ could make it new, and that I wouldn't give up for anything.
But I had to have everything unraveled, everything dismantled right down to the foundations. And part of what saved me was the intensity of her fury. And it took her and I 11 years to heal. 11 years. And that's what the weekend in the shack is. That's an 11-year process. 11 years before Kim says in front of a group of friends, I never thought I'd say this, but it was all worth it. It was all worth it. And she's not justifying anything, but she is saying, nothing's so dead. God can't grow something living in it.
The way home, every single time, is this. After my worst failure, after I am convinced this time I have gone too far and destroyed too much, I must believe who God says I am. I am not defined by my erratic behaviors, but by something so much deeper, infinitely strong and constant. I am a new creature. When I find myself risking to trust this way of seeing, the power of the lie begins to vanish. And that increasing confidence in who I really am becomes the bedrock that will break my shame and addiction, so I get to live free, for the rest of my life.
We have no idea about the truth of our beings. We do not know how relentless this affection that will pursue us, wrap itself around our brokenness, and sing us into healing. We matter. Every single one of us matters, and the choices we make matter. Every choice to forgive, to be kind, to be authentic, to open up our inside worlds, to tell our secrets. These things change the cosmos, not just inside you, but inside this whole created universe that we dwell within. Who you are matters, and who you're becoming matters. You're the one that he left the 99 to go find.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up,